I had my way, everything would be so nice. This world would be like Paris. No, it would be a paradise. No one would ever have to say, I'm gonna get my wish someday. All one would have to do is say, this is my order, if you may.
Welcome to another episode of the School Without Walls. I'm Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program. Traditionally, I have interviewed persons more or less, but we are doing lectures in preparation for February, the Black History Month. The date is January the 14th, 2015. And I have with me as my guest lecturer, Mr. William Lawson, who is a sophomore here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. He's a veteran of the United States Navy. So glad to have you.
Good to be here.
And what we want to keep in mind is we're trying to confine history prior to America, because in studying the history of how African Americans got involved in writing their history and so forth in the USA was under the guidance of Eurocentric thinking and scholars. And that is not for the best interest of getting truth.
Right.
Because most of us who are honest know that we've had generations of partial truth. And a partial truth is a lie. It's just that simple.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is uncover that and get as much truth out there as possible. So you may begin wherever you would like to, as long as it's not in the USA.
Everything that's done in the dark comes to light anyway.
That is so true.
That's why the first action in the Bible was, let there be light.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very deep spot. A lot of different religions take that and they can meditate and break one truth down to 10 or 20 different stories.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to really look at history and wanted somebody to actually think about back to a time before the history that we're given, mm-hmm. and what actually was and how this world came to be and where these first people came from, you might want to look at a map. You know, mm-hmm. Get you a globe or find a picture, look it up on Google or something. People got all these phones.
Yeah.
Google has a map where you can look at the earth. If you just take a look at the earth and glance over there to Africa and central to the main continent of Asia, mm-hmm. you can kind of see how it almost looks like a giant puzzle where, mm-hmm. where there's pieces that fit together, mm-hmm. but maybe over time it's stretched out. Mm-hmm. There was a proverb, an ancient African proverb that said, at one time the heavens were so close to earth that we could touch the skies and the heavens. Mm-hmm. But over time it drifted apart. And that has scientifically been explained as the universe expanding. Mm-hmm. But not much credit is given outside of the scientific community mm-hmm. for establishing the Big Bang. They don't realize that we've known about this for 2,000-3,000 years.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. And actually, I'd say 90%, if not the entire Torah, the Holy Bible, and the Quran, if you look on that map, there's a small circle where all of these many actions and characters and lives transpired and took place, and it's in this one small area. Mm-hmm. And that's the history of that one small area. But now it's spread out to where it's all around the world.
Yes.
And when you really go back and take a look at it, that small area, you could really say that is the cradle of civilization. Mm-hmm. But on all sides of that area, you have every different race of people. Mm-hmm. If you look to the bottom of it, you have from black to yellow. Mm-hmm. If you go up top, you got from yellow to red to pink, all shades, everybody. Mm-hmm. It started right there in that area where the Mediterranean is. Mm-hmm.
They call it the Fertile Crescent, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
Fertile Crescent. It was some of the best land in the world at that time.
Some Gnostic zealots and Essenes even called it like a giant river mm-hmm. with a leap pad. Like frogs jump from lily pad to lily pad. Mm-hmm. The island of Sicily would have been like, a lily pad in the middle.
Right, and the island of Sicily connects into, on the northern side, Italy, right?
Right.
On the
Southern side of Africa.
With Corsica?
Yes, sir.
Corsica. Corsica. And that's a good bridge to show what I was talking about earlier, how the people mixed,
Yes, sir.
the different ethnic groups mix when they, after they've established them. We have 2 more minutes here.
If you even look at where Spain is on that map, Spain is probably closer than the Strait of Gibraltar, connecting Russia to Alaska.
It is closer.
Because
closer.
you know, back in the days when there was the Ice Age, they
Right.
say that that's where they came over.
That was a bridge I was told that Gibraltar connected with Africa and that part of Europe, right?
Right.
It's a bridge you could walk over, and now that channel is
It
not very
flooded
wide.
over.
Yeah, it's nothing compared to the separation of Alaska from Russia. It's
Right.
much wide. I think it was about 20-some miles up there.
Yes, sir. And people passed it at one point in time. So you have to believe that from Spain to Africa, that was another way to get in other than the land route of Egypt.
We have 1 second. Speaking of Spain, I was taught that the North Africans, the Moors, came into Europe by that way.
Yes,
when
sir.
they conquered the Germans that were occupying that part, and later created a country called Spain. See, Spain is an African word, means hidden. It
Yes,
means
sir.
hidden. It was hidden for a
The
while.
hidden African country on the continent of Europe. How
Right.
about that?
Yeah, so that's what it. We'll be back in just a few minutes to continue our conversation with Mr. William Lawson.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Searching for help with Dachshund breeding.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Information on hot water heating.
No. Sarah's bright, but when she's reading, she has trouble sounding out the words.
World music playing track now.
No.
Let me try. Our daughter gets confused about which details in a story are important.
Which paper towels are most absorbent?
What?
Here are 5 product reviews.
Why are you not getting me?
See, I told you.
Wait, I was trying to show you how Sarah feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
So I've come up with the family emergency plan.
Great. What is it?
It's difficult to talk about, so I'm not telling you.
How will we know what to do?
You won't.
I'm so glad I won't have to remember anything.
And me too. Thanks for this, sweetie.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host of this educational program. My guest is Mr. William Lawson, who is a sophomore here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, and he's a Navy veteran. You know, earlier you were talking about the globe and so forth, and I thought about this. I often wondered, well, I guess I should say first, we're trying to show that the original people were people of color, not the people we see in magazines and movies. And this sort of answers what I noticed earlier. Wherever the European explorers went, they found people. I don't think they've ever been to a place where they didn't find people, and the people of color. All right, now, I did some study where they said the people left Africa, and it was the first wave followed the sea course. They went around what is now India and on up into China and on out into the islands, out into Australia, Polynesia, Micronesia, and all that there.
Yes,
And so whenever they came there, those people were there. So that indicate that they evidently was here first, okay?
Yes, sir.
And so that is something worthy of note. And another thing, the question should be on the floor is, if Europeans were the first people, why would they be in Africa and all over the world digging in the ground trying to find out what somebody else had done? Isn't that something to think about?
I believe from the very beginning, Europeans have gotten their knowledge outside of Europe. But when they bring it back to Europe, they have to teach people who don't know any better. So they can tell them whatever they want.
Yes.
Long as they put that little bit of truth in it, they can tell this big, huge lie, like black people are uncivilized and animals and should be caged. It's okay for a black male to be shot in the street. You know, it builds over time to the point where you're left with a big amount of hypocrisy and people don't want to.
And these are things we want to change. That's the purpose of this program, is try to change that. And I feel that once the truth is known, we have in John the 8th chapter, the 32nd verse say, Christ was speaking, he said, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Many of us are enslaved due to the lack of knowledge or the miseducation, as Dr. Carter G. Woodson said, right?
Yes, sir.
He said the African American has been seriously miseducated, and he dedicated his life to trying to re-educate, and I've taken up the mantle to try to continue the re-education of our people.
I've been on that path a lot of the time throughout my life. It might sound suicidal, but I've led myself into jails and insane asylums just to meet and talk to some of these people to see where their minds are at. I came back to deliver that story. I feel kind of like a messenger for my people because I read the Bible and it said, with all I get and get knowledge. So I took it upon myself to answer that call, knocking the door should be open. So I've gone back and I've really done a lot of studying and research, and Carter G. Woodson and George G.M. James, these are two of the guys who lit a torch in me that there is something higher and something better that we should all strive for.
Let's talk a little bit about George James, because he was a professor here at the university when I was in school, and he's one of the profound and prolific writers of ancient history. He helped me a lot to start thinking. When I was a teenager, 18, 19, 20 years old, he wrote The Burnt Faces of Africa. Have you seen that one yet?
No, sir.
That one, you should seek it. Then he wrote The Rape of Africa, and he also wrote Stolen Legacy. Those are three books that, when I was here, they were on campus. And I never did understand how his life ended. Did you? I know he died suddenly. He was killed.
His book was, it isn't the first I've read and the kind of story about that has happened. There's been at least 2 or 3 other books. One is Behold a Pale Horse, but people will put out books that aren't really accepted by the mainstream because it contains a portion of the knowledge that they don't want you to know about.
Right.
And it's kind of grim to say, but it's against an oath, so you pay for it with your life.
It is believed that somebody killed him. Have you ever heard anything similar to that? How his life ended?
I heard that the story was so vague that it screamed out of an assassination plot, kind of like Patrice Lumumba.
Right, because he was not a person who was ill, went somewhere and got sick. The next thing I knew, that Dr. James was killed accidentally somewhere.
He was leaving UAPB on a weekend trip somewhere, and phone call came back that he was dead.
And he walked right on this campus, and he was a distinguished, genteel man, short man, carried a cane. And he was born in the, not an island, in South America, the place where this minister misled these folks and so many of them died. What was it? Down in South America, where this preacher about 20 years ago.
Jim Jones?
Jim Jones, and I can't think of the name of it.
El Salvador, maybe?
No, it wasn't El Salvador, but it was, I can't think of it right now. Can you think of it? Anyway, he was a South American from an English-speaking country, so he was educated in Europe and Oxford and all like that. He had studied in Africa and so forth. He's quite a scholar.
A lot of black scholars like that kind of turn toward the end of their life because they're brought up in the English European society, so they're getting the finest knowledge, and they put on the airs that, oh, I'm smarter, so I'm better than these black people, but then they get the knowledge and they're like, wait, these are my people and we're being misled.
That is so true. That is so true. I even had African associates when I was in school, it just so happened that I had run into people like Dr. James. He was strictly African looking, you understand, but he was not born in this, over there in Africa, but he was very African looking, and I learned to appreciate him, and I got acquainted with the African students better than the average student because of my nature, my so forth and so on. But as you said, we'll be back in a few minutes to close out here. One more segment.
Hart, what's going on?
I'm leaving.
Why? What did I do?
Not enough. You constantly ignore me. You barely eat anything healthy. You're half as active as you used to be. The pressure is just too much. I quit.
Okay, I get it. I'll do better. Just please, don't leave.
Okay. But remember, if I go, you go.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you. Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Thank you. You got a king?
Go fish.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
You make me wear my bike helmet. Taught me never to run with scissors. And to follow the swimming rules. You tell me to stay away from drugs. To always buckle my seatbelt.
So why do you keep a loaded gun in your drawer?
How safe is that?
You asked them to follow some safety rules. Now they're asking you. In fact, they're counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. Remember, always lock it up. Visit ncpc.org.
Those of you who've just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host of this educational program called The School Without Walls, and my guest today is Mr. William Lawson, sophomore here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. He's also a veteran of the United States Navy, and what we have been trying to do today, this is the third segment prior to us discussing African American history in the USA. We wanted to explain to those who are concerned about the proper way of presenting history is go back to the beginning, the foundation, and you move forward and be as accurate as you can. So we've talked about ancient Egypt. The original people of Egypt were black, people of color. And the reason we were talking about that for 300 or 400 years, it just so happened that the European Americans who named themselves white have denied the truth about black people. We're trying to deal with that right on, whereas hopefully someday we can just face with the truth and as Dr. King has said, be judged by the contents of our character rather than the color of our skin. But until we get to that point, more of us need to be educated. As I was telling Mr. Williams here, Mr. Lawson, when I was in school, my generation was so ignorant due to the lack of proper training about Africa. We had quite a bit of conflict on camps with the African students and the African Americans because the African Americans laughed at the Africans the way they dressed. We shouldn't have, because we should have had knowledge that they wear that type of clothing. They call them walking around in pajamas and things like that. And the Africans thought we were mostly slaves. So we had a lot of conflict. I befriended quite a few of them, but they did look down on us, and I later understood why. The Africans that came here had never experienced slavery, see, and they were called Negroes by the Americans, and they resented that, and the Americans got upset due to the lack of knowledge because they were not Negroes. You understand? I'm not Negro, I'm African, I'm Nigerian. But they thought, he think he's more than we are. He doesn't want to be a Negro. Well, a Negro was the name of the descendants of slaves, right?
Yes, sir.
And they were trying to make that distinction, but it took a decade or so for our people to accept them, and not thinking that they thought they were so much better, but they simply had a different experience where they didn't have any knowledge of slavery.
You know what, Dr. Hobbs, that brings up an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if the slave masters who brought the Africans over to the Americas weren't Christians, that we would be Christians today?
No, we would be Muslims, because most of the Africans who came here slaves already were members of the Muslim religion. So we would have likely been, if they just allowed us the freedom to continue the religion of our elders, we would be Muslims, yeah. But that might have been a small segment, but my understanding, most of them came from the same area, west. Now there were Christian Africans up around Egypt and...
Isn't Ethiopia in the west?
Ethiopian is more or less, it's right south of Egypt, so it's kind of in the eastern part of Africa. Ethiopia. So, you know, Egypt is, you know where Egypt is located?
Right on the west.
Yeah, and you go right on the... I get them confused here. You said it's west?
Yes, west is Egypt and Morocco, which is over in the east.
See, the right-hand side of the map is east. Left-hand side is west, right?
No, sir.
It's not?
The right-hand side is the west, because it's over here toward Asia. North.
Okay.
South. North, south.
Right is east.
East.
So left is west. See? That's where it is. So it would be in the eastern part of Africa.
Southeast.
Yeah, in the eastern part of Africa. West would be around where Morocco, the Strait of Gibraltar, and that part.
And Libya.
Okay, right. But anyway, no, your question would be that if they came mostly out of the northern part of Africa, they would be Christians. But from the west, they would be Muslim, because, as I said, the Coptic religion was introduced into Africa just 12 years after Christ's ascension. So most of the Africans, and it had moved down in Ethiopia and different parts of Africa over a period of 200 or 300 years.
So African Muslims had been terrorized for over 500 years.
That is so true.
And had their people taken and stolen. And
that's right. Okay, we have about another minute, and we're winding up here. We talked about the Coptic Christians in North Africa who helped establish the Roman Catholic Church of Europe, Southern Europe. We talked about the Black Greeks, and also we mentioned briefly that the Romans, and in order to understand that, we have to understand that the Mediterranean Sea is like this desk here. Southern Europe is here, Northern Africa is here, and the folks intermingle. They didn't have any laws stating that you are better than me because of complexion. They just dealt according to...
They understood melanin and what gave people their skin pigmentation.
Right.
They were actually a higher level of life forms than what we've descended into.
Yeah, we have degenerated somewhat, seemingly, and it looked like it was all over capitalism, trying to get that dollar.
Yes, sir.
And it was getting...
Money's the root of evil.
And I was also told the revolution, the Industrial Revolution had a lot to do with greed, because it so happened that it came during the time of the awareness of the Europeans. They took advantage of that militarily, bombs and guns and so forth. Yes, they developed quite a military base that subdued a lot of the people who were great warriors in the old tradition.
Bombs took out the need for strong armies. The Industrial Revolution, the assembly line reduced the need for slavery.
There you go. All right, thank you, Tim. We're finished here, right?